governor. Welcome back. You knew him as a congressman and as a governor. What's Tim Walz like?
Well, he's a radical. I served with him for several years in Congress, and then we both ran for governor at the same time in our respective states. But when he got elected governor, he made completely different decisions for his people than I did. It was shocking for me to see what he was doing to his people that lived in Minnesota. He locked down the entire state, businesses, churches, homes, told people mandating masks and vaccines, didn't give them any opportunities. In fact, we've had thousands and thousands and thousands of people from Minnesota move to South Dakota just to get away from him. And I think that showed up in his reelection as well. I mean, he didn't get reelected by wide margins. I think he only had 52% of the vote. And last year, his legislature had a bill that 2/3 of the state wanted to be annexed into South Dakota just to get away from him. So, you know, people that have had to live under his leadership have suffered. They've lost their businesses, their livelihoods, their freedoms. And, boy, if his policies had been implemented across this country, we would have lost America.
So I want you to hear what he said during the George Floyd riots. Let's listen. Cut 9.
We saw large, peaceful protests focusing on the systemic changes that get to the heart of why we're in this situation. And when I say we, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the state of Minnesota, nationally, and as we've seen over the last 24 hours, internationally. A society that does not put equity and inclusion at the center of it is certainly going to eventually come to the places where we're at.
Really? So I guess it was inevitable because we're such a terrible society? Is that what do you make of this?
I think he truly believes that. I really do believe that he believes that, because when that happened, if you remember, all the riots and violence in this country started in his city. It started there, and it perpetuated out across the country from there. And during that time, he did not support his law enforcement. He did not uphold the law, and it got out of control, and people were suffered. Their businesses were burned. Crimes were happening all the time. And then when he realized it was out of control, he asked his neighboring governors, he asked us to send our National Guard to help restore law and order to the streets in Minneapolis. And it just isn't appropriate that when you're a bad leader, make bad decisions, that you have to turn to other people to try to bail you out and get you out of the situation.
Listen to his view on crime. Cut 11.
I think it takes a lot of imagination and courage.
I'm sorry, his wife. I'm sorry, this is his wife on crime. Listen to this.
Okay.
People, and sets people up for failure to a system that is restorative, right? That is equitable, that is healing. How many chances do you get? My answer to that is as many chances as you need, which doesn't really...
So, I mean, that's the attitude. Let him out of prison. Don't arrest him to begin with. And if I put him in jail, make sure they're out right away. That's what, remember, they're partners in this.
I don't understand that. So there's no consequences for breaking the law? And then what kind of a country do you have if you don't have a right and a wrong? And that's the basic principles that this country was founded on, and what makes sure that we have a functioning society. So when people start talking about equitable situations, I'd like to ask them how to define it, because America doesn't guarantee you equal outcomes. It gives you equal opportunities. Everybody gets an equal opportunity in this country. What you do with that opportunity is a consequence of the actions that you take. I don't think Governor Walz understands that at all, or he's twisted it into some perverted viewpoint that ends up really looking like socialism.
So last week I thought for sure it was going to be Mark Kelly, because, we got the astronaut military, so-called moderate, even though he votes with Biden all the time. When he gets up for an election, he gets tough on the border, but he's got an impressive resume. Appreciate his service. Just to contrast her, he was out right away. And then I thought it was Governor Shapiro. She needs Pennsylvania, and he's a charismatic speaker. But evidently, he's got too much charisma and ambition for that. And then Van Jones said this last night on CNN, cut 15.
Is it just because he's a moderate, or is there some anti-Jewish bias here? You also have anti-Semitism that has gotten marbled into this party. You can be for the Palestinians without being an anti-Jewish bigot, but there are some anti-Jewish bigots out there. And there's some disquiet now, and there has to be. How much of what just happened is caving into some of these darker parts in the party?
What do you think?
I think it's absolutely true. I think that's why she didn't pick Shapiro, is because she didn't want to alienate those who don't like the Jewish people and don't support Israel. I think she picked Tim Walz because he's so unknown in this country that they think they can remake him and remodel him into something that gets them elected, and then he will follow through on his radical leftist policies that he truly does believe. So he'll say one thing and do another, and that's the exact kind of puppet that she was looking for.
So just so you know, police force shrunk by 40%, I told you, in Minneapolis. Nearly 50,000 people left the state between 2020 and 2022, a 22% increase in prices in Minneapolis from the start of Walz's tenure. He had a surplus. Now he's got a deficit. So we know what he's done in terms of making it a sanctuary state. He's proud of it. He also says if you're an illegal immigrant, free driver's license, free room, free board, free education. He also is against vouchers that would allow people in underserved community, challenged communities a chance to go to private schools. That's a kowtow to the union. So I'm not sure that Kamala Harris knew what she bought. Do you believe she did?
No, I don't know if she thoroughly vetted him and everything that he's done and what he's done as governor. He's raised taxes. He's gone out there and mandated energy policies that are unsustainable, that his state won't be able to comply with, and put in penalties and fines that would cripple his economy. So he's not a CEO. He's not a businessman. He's not somebody who's had to balance a budget and really see what happens when you don't make some hard decisions. He's been a politician. He's a good politician that says what he thinks can get him through the situation, but actually doesn't know how to govern. And that's what should be alarming to us, is we're not picking rock stars and people to lead this country. We're picking people who literally are going to decide our future. And I hope America and the population and the public out here realize that this is a very consequential election because of how left and how radical Harris and Walz are.
Do you like the way Trump and Vance are running so far? What corrections would you make? What do you expect him to make?
Oh, I think they're working hard and they're getting out to areas where they need to win the hearts and minds of people that still haven't decided, what they're going to do when it gets to November. So I think they're doing great. I think it should be a full court press of everybody who supports President Trump and J.D. Vance, that we can't sit home and assume that they're going to get this done on their own. It takes every single person who loves America to get out there and talk to your neighbors and talk to the people you work with and make sure that they're going to vote to put President Trump back in the White House.
Why is it so close? Why is it tied?
Oh, I think because politics is so divisive and the media is not telling the truth. If the media really put out, if you could turn on NBC, CBS, CNN, and hear the truth of what these leaders do, what they believe, I think, and how that lines up with America principles and what it would mean for our national security and our economy, I think that President Trump would win overwhelmingly. But they're not hearing that. Instead, they're demonizing people on a twisted story or playing on people's emotions, or they're casting fear. And America's just not built on fear. America's built on going after and going forward with a vision and a hope. That's what Americans need again.
There's one thing I like to bring up that you could really that really resonates with you, and that's using our natural resources to help our country. And it's not just oil and gas. If you really care, if you think electric cars are the future, and we have the rare earth here in Minnesota, why are you putting a 20-year moratorium on all mining? That's exactly what Biden did with the blessing of the governor. And yet they still want to green the economy and make 50% of all cars in Minnesota by 2030 electric. You can't have it both ways, Governor.
No, that's exactly right. That's if we need to rely on ourselves. That should be the first question that we ask ourselves on every policy when it comes to food security and energy security, because that's what holds this country together and keeps us functioning. And it should be, how do we depend only on ourselves? What concerns me is what Governor Walz has believed and supported over the years makes us much more reliant on our enemies and countries that hate us to get our energy supply and to get our food supply. And that's a national security issue. If he doesn't understand that, he's either doing it on purpose in supporting those policies because he wants to weaken America or because he just simply doesn't understand, and that's even scarier.
Do you feel as though the Trump campaign has reached out to people like you to have a role over the next 90 days?
I think that they can and they will. I think that they need to get every single surrogate that they have out on the trail telling their story and their successes and why what Trump and Vance believe is good for families that are trying to put food on the table, and how it's going to open up more opportunities for them to get a better job and pay their bills and have a retirement fund and get their kids through school. So I think every single person needs to be out there as much as possible telling that, men, women, families, faith leaders, people who are running businesses. It just is powerful when you hear it from someone that's from your community or someone who's in the same profession or job as you. It's different than when you hear it just from one candidate. When you've got the endorsement of people that believe in you and you hear from them, it gives you a credibility that I think we're going to need when it comes to a victory on November 5th.
Governor Kristi Noem, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Always great to talk to you.